My own son humiliated me in front of a packed wedding hall, his wedding. He kicked me out like I was a stranger. That night, something in me snapped. I vanished from his life. But not for long. What came next? Let's just say, revenge was served warm. Before continue, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. That's free and only way to support us. Thank you. I was sipping cheap instant coffee when the envelope slid through the mail slot. Thick, creamy paper. Golden edges. Looked like royalty had sent it. For a split second, my heart did a little dance. Maybe my boy still remembered his old man after all. Daniel. My only son. The flesh of my flesh. The same boy who used to cling to my pant leg when he was scared of thunder. The same one I taught to ride a bike, who cried when I let go and cheered when he didn't fall. Now, he was getting married. And I was invited. Well, sort of. No personal note. No call. Just Mr. Franklin Morgan, typed like it came from a robot. Felt more like a tax letter than a wedding invite. No, Dad. No, can't wait to see you. Just a location, time, and a dress code I couldn't afford. Still, I told myself to chill. Maybe he was just busy. Maybe Clara, his fiancée, was handling the logistics. Weddings are stressful. I mean, I hadn't even met the girl properly yet, but love's a funny thing. Blinds you, twists you, sometimes even steals your voice. So, I pulled out my old navy blue suit. The same one I wore to my wife's funeral. Yeah, I know, bad omen. But it was the only one that still fit. I dusted it off, polished my shoes till they squeaked like a kid's toy, and headed out with a cane in one hand and hope in the other. The venue? It looked like something out of a magazine. Fairy lights, classical music, white roses spilling from every corner. Fancy stuff. The kind of place where even the napkins probably had a college degree. I stood there awkwardly at the entrance while a waiter in gloves offered me champagne like I knew what to do with it. I smiled, nodded, tried to blend in. And then I saw him. Daniel. My son. My pride. My everything. He looked sharp. Tailored suit. Slicked hair. Grinning like a politician. He was surrounded by her family, tall people with perfect teeth, fake laughs, and eyes that didn't even glance my way. I waited. Maybe he'd spot me and run over. Maybe he'd hug me like the old days and say, "Dad, I'm glad you came." But he didn't. I walked toward him slowly. Each step made my cane echo louder than the piano music. He looked up. His eyes met mine. And nothing. Not a flicker. Not a smile. Just a nod. A polite, robotic nod like I was a coworker showing up to a conference. That hurt. That cut deep. But I kept standing tall. Someone from Clara's side, her uncle maybe, asked Daniel something. He whispered back while glancing at me. Then the uncle chuckled, patted him on the back, and shot me a look. One of those, "you're not from our world" kinda looks. You know the type. I found my seat, way in the back, next to a table holding extra forks and a speaker that buzzed like a mosquito in heat. No reserved sign. No spot next to his mother's photo on the front row. Just me and that buzzing speaker. But I stayed. Because I'm his father. When the music started and Clara floated down the aisle like a fairy tale, everyone stood. Cameras clicked. People cried. Except me. I watched quietly, alone in the crowd. And then, the moment happened. I wanted a better view. Just to move a few seats closer. My knees ached, but I stood up anyway. Took a slow step forward. And that's when my son, my blood, turned, stared straight at me, and said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Stay back there." No smile. No apology. Just eyes. People turned. Some raised eyebrows. One woman gasped. My face burned like I'd been slapped. He didn't even say, "Dad." I nodded. Said nothing. Walked back and sat down in that buzz-humming corner, holding onto my cane like it was the only thing holding me together. They exchanged vows. Kissed. Danced. And I sat alone, watching a stranger in my son's skin celebrate a life I clearly wasn't invited to be part of. That night, I walked home. No ride. No thank you. Just the echo of Daniel's voice haunting every step. That was the night something in me snapped. You can only break a man so many times before he stops bending and starts plotting. And I, Franklin Morgan, was done being broken. The next morning, I woke up with a pain in my chest that had nothing to do with my heart condition. It was something deeper. Raw. Heavy. Like grief, but angrier. I kept replaying that moment in my head, the way Daniel looked at me like I was nothing. Not a father. Not family. Just a nuisance in his picture-perfect wedding. I didn't even get to shake his hand, let alone say congratulations. I was just a shadow in the back, told to stay put like some embarrassing relative they didn't want in the photos. What made it worse? No one said a word. Not one guest came to check on me afterward. Not even the cousins I used to buy ice cream for when they scraped their knees at family picnics. They looked at me like I didn't belong, like I'd crashed the party instead of being the reason that boy even existed. But it wasn't the silence that hurt the most. It was the chuckle. Some man, don't know who, don't care, laughed when Daniel shut me down. A smug, muffled laugh that crawled under my skin like a tick. It echoed louder than the wedding bells. That laugh told me everything I needed to know. They all thought I was pathetic. Even Daniel. I walked home that night with blisters in my shoes and tears I refused to let fall. The sky was cloudy, and the streetlights flickered like they weren't sure they wanted to shine for me. I passed by a bakery, one I used to take Daniel to when he was a kid. He used to beg for those chocolate eclairs. I'd buy 2 and pretend I only wanted one, just so he wouldn't feel guilty eating both. I stopped outside and stared at the window, watching some kid inside get handed an eclair with a toothy grin. That's when I realized what I'd done wrong all these years. I gave too much, loved too blindly, sacrificed without ever demanding respect. And it had cost me everything. At home, I didn't even change out of the suit. I collapsed into my chair, pulled out an old photo album, and stared at the memories that had grown stale with time. Daniel's first step. His first haircut. That Halloween he dressed up as a pirate and refused to take the eye patch off for 3 days. Was that boy gone forever? Or had I just never really known him? Either way, I was done mourning. This wasn't just a slap in the face. It was a public execution of every ounce of dignity I had left. And I'd sat there and taken it like a loyal dog waiting for scrap. But no more. I wasn't going to cry about it. I wasn't going to beg him to call. I was going to do something else. Something cold, calculated, and poetic. Let them think I was just some old man who didn't matter. Let them laugh now. Because I was going to give them a reason to remember my name, not as the man Daniel pushed aside at his wedding, but as the man who taught them all a lesson they'd never forget. I didn't know exactly how just yet. But revenge, sweet, quiet, and absolutely satisfying, had already moved into my bones like a tenant paying rent in rage. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving. I was planning. It started with a list. I sat down the next morning, poured myself a cup of coffee so strong it could wake the dead, and wrote out names. Not people I hated. No, I wasn't looking for enemies. I was looking for leverage. I wasn't going to shout or post anything on Facebook, or write some dramatic letter and set it on fire. That's what amateurs do. I was going to do what every father secretly knows how to do best, get inside their heads, build something with my own 2 hands, and let it burn right under their feet. Daniel thought he was done with me, but he had no idea that his future was standing quietly in the shadows, holding all the blueprints. You see, what Daniel didn't know, or didn't care to ask, was that I still owned a large piece of land on Mill Creek. He thought I sold it years ago when things got rough. Truth? I kept it, paid taxes on it, tended to it like an old dog nobody wanted but I couldn't let go. And guess what popped up next to that land just a few months ago? Commercial development project. Shops, cafes, galleries, and yes, a whole new restaurant district. The same district Daniel and his new bride Clara had invested their savings into. I read in one of those wedding websites they were opening a new Italian fusion place. Casa di Amore, House of Love. Well, guess who now owned the land behind that House of Love? Yours truly. And suddenly, my sad little patch of land looked like a gold mine. But I wasn't after money. I was after satisfaction. I called an old buddy of mine, Jerry. Used to be a contractor, now mostly retired, except for the projects that amuse him. And this one? He damn near choked on his chewing tobacco when I told him what I had in mind. We laughed for a good 5 minutes before he agreed to help. You see, I didn't want to build just anything. I wanted to build a bakery. Not just a bakery, a place that oozed charm. Big windows, soft jazz playing, warm cinnamon smells wafting down the street. A place where people would walk in and forget what time it was. A place that felt like home, the very thing Daniel had thrown away. We called it Morgan's Oven. I spent every morning watching it go up. I picked out the curtains, the chairs, the logo. I hired single moms, retirees, kids just out of school. I made them all feel like family. Meanwhile, Daniel's restaurant struggled to open on time. Permits delayed. A surprise plumbing issue. And one day, their produce supplier, a company run by an old bowling friend of mine, accidentally doubled their invoice. Little things. Tiny cracks. But when you're building on ego and granite countertops, even a few cracks can bring the whole thing down. And Morgan's Oven? We opened before them. 2 weeks earlier. Lines out the door. People licking frosting off their fingers and asking about my grandmother's pie recipe, which didn't exist, by the way. I made it up. But hey, they loved it. Every time someone asked if I had kids, I smiled and said, used to. They always thought I was joking. But deep down, I wasn't. Daniel walked by once. I saw him from the kitchen window. He stood across the street, staring at the line outside my bakery. He didn't come in, just watched. I watched him too. He had no idea I was the reason half the city was skipping his overpriced truffle pasta and eating $3 cookies from an old man with a secret. And that was just the beginning. The morning Daniel stepped inside my bakery, the air got thick. It was a Wednesday. Quiet. Rain tapping softly on the glass. The kind of morning that usually meant an old couple sipping coffee in the corner and a teenager pretending to study. I was behind the counter, tying my apron, humming a Sinatra tune when the door chimed. And there he was. My son. Looking like life had chewed him up and spit him back out with a receipt stapled to his forehead. His hair was messy, eyes baggy, and the expensive coat he wore at his wedding? Now wrinkled like it had been sleeping on his couch. He didn't recognize me at first. I'd lost some weight, shaved the beard, and swapped the walking cane for a bounce in my step. He just stared at the chalkboard menu like it held the secrets of the universe. Then his eyes met mine. And I swear, I saw his brain stall. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again like a confused fish. I just smiled. Coffee? I asked. Or maybe something sweet to cut through the bitterness? He flinched. Barely. But I saw it. He mumbled something about coffee. No sugar. No cream. Bitter, like his choices, apparently. I made it slow, deliberate. Every clink of the spoon was a little drumbeat of vengeance. When I handed it to him, our fingers touched. Cold. Awkward. You run this place, he asked finally, eyes darting around at the cozy decor, the happy customers, the sign that read Morgan's Oven, where everyone's family. I nodded. Yeah. Opened it a few months ago. Business is sweet. He looked like he swallowed a lemon whole. His lips twitched like he wanted to say something, maybe even apologize, but pride is a stubborn disease. Instead, he blurted out that their restaurant was struggling. Investors were pulling out. Clara was blaming him. Everything that could go wrong was. And just like that, he turned into a boy again. Not the smug groom who kicked me out in front of strangers, but the scared kid who once cried because his science fair volcano exploded in the trunk. Part of me, a small, ancient part, wanted to hug him. But the rest of me? The part he left sitting alone at his wedding? That part wanted to twist the knife. So I leaned in and said, funny. I heard someone was planning to buy out the lease next door. A bakery expansion. You know how real estate works. Someone wins. Someone moves. His jaw dropped. I didn't blink. He finally understood. The bakery. The location. The timing. The permits. The supplier issues. All of it. Me. His father. The man he humiliated. He backed away like I'd slapped him with a pie. Why? He asked. That was the moment. The climax of our little play. I could have ranted, given a monologue about betrayal, about love, about how blood doesn't mean loyalty. But I didn't. I just shrugged. Because you invited me to your wedding, I said. And told me to sit in the back. He left without finishing the coffee. I watched from the window as the rain washed over him like karma with a water hose. And you know what? That cup of bitter coffee? Best damn thing I ever brewed. After Daniel stormed out, the bakery felt warmer somehow. Not temperature-wise, it was still drafty near the door, thanks to an old heater that wheezed like a smoker on a treadmill, but emotionally peaceful, like the air finally settled after a storm had passed. I thought I'd feel triumphant, victorious, like some old cowboy walking away from a duel, smoke curling off his revolver. But what I actually felt? Hungry. So I grabbed a cinnamon roll, sat by the window, and watched the rain blur the street. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't regretting anything. The boy needed to learn. Life isn't just about throwing grand weddings and pretending your father doesn't exist when it's convenient. No, life's about who shows up when you're broke, tired, and can't figure out how to unclog a sink. And I was all those things for him once. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel the tiniest pang in my chest when I saw him walking away, head down, soaked like a lost puppy without a leash. The next day, Clara showed up. Oh yeah. She walked in wearing heels that probably cost more than my monthly rent, mascara smudged from either tears or rage, hard to tell, and a face so sharp you could slice bread on her cheekbones. She didn't ask for coffee. She asked for war. I know what you did, she hissed, gripping the counter like she wanted to break it. I smiled. Which part? She glared. Said we were ruining everything, that I'd sabotaged their restaurant, that I was bitter and jealous and small. Small. That word stuck. Coming from a woman who thought love could be measured in social media likes and champagne brands, it was hilarious. You know what's small? I said. Kicking your husband's father to the back of his own wedding. She didn't answer. Her lips just quivered like a lie trying to find an exit. I leaned in closer. I didn't ruin anything. You did. When you built a castle on arrogance and tried to pretend it was a home. She stormed out, heels clicking like gunfire. That night, their restaurant's Yelp reviews started to crumble. Not from me, I swear, but from customers who hated the overpriced entrees and cold staff. A few pictures even surfaced of a rat in the alley out back. Again, not my doing. Just fate doing its dishes. Meanwhile, Morgan's oven? We added 3 new items to the menu and started weekend poetry night. A guy named Mitch read depressing haikus while people ate cookies shaped like hearts. Business was booming. And Daniel? He went silent. Until one rainy evening, I found him sitting on the bench outside. No umbrella. Just a hoodie and guilt wrapped around his shoulders like a blanket made of bad decisions. I opened the door. He didn't look up. Cold out, I said. He nodded. Want something warm? He shook his head. But then he spoke. Clara left. Just like that. A whisper in the dark. I sat beside him, the silence between us thicker than anything either of us wanted to say. She said I never stood up for myself. That I was spineless. I said nothing. Because for once. He wasn't wrong. And then, like someone opening an old, rusted chest, he muttered, I didn't mean to humiliate you. It wasn't an apology. But it was close enough to poke the part of my heart that wasn't made of bricks and barbed wire. You didn't just humiliate me, I replied. You made me disappear. We sat in silence, letting the street lights flicker over the puddles. He looked at me with eyes I hadn't seen in years, not the man-child chasing business ventures, but the little boy who once cried when I forgot to pick him up from school. I messed up. Finally. There it was. Not just the truth. The acknowledgement. The realization that words can heal only when the wounds are wide open. I didn't say, I forgive you. Not yet. Because this wasn't a movie. This was life. And sometimes, forgiveness takes more than one rainy bench conversation. But I handed him a napkin with a cinnamon roll wrapped inside. You still like these? I asked. He smiled. Tiny. Broken. But real. Yeah, he whispered. That night, he walked away chewing on something sweet. And maybe, just maybe, thinking about the bitter taste of pride. 1 week passed. Then 2. The holidays crept in with their usual fake cheer, blinking lights, half-off sales, and neighbors pretending to like each other. I kept the bakery open late during those weeks. People came in for warmth more than pastries. A cookie and a kind word go a long way when the world feels cold. Then, on Christmas Eve, it happened. Daniel came back. No warning. No call. Just the quiet squeak of the door chime while the snow flurried behind him like a movie scene. He looked tired. Not just physically, soul-tired. The kind of tired you get when you finally realize the damage you've done. I was wiping the counter, pretending I didn't notice the way my heart skipped a beat. I didn't want to make it easy for him. He walked up, hands in pockets, eyes scanning the bakery like it held the answers to all his failures. Still busy, he said softly. I nodded. People like sweet things. Silence. Awkward, thick silence. Got a job. That caught me off guard. A job. He nodded. At a grocery store. Stocking shelves. Night shift. It's not much, but it's honest, I finished for him. He smiled, not wide, just a tiny curve, like a wound trying to heal. Clara had cleaned him out, apparently. Took what little money was left from the restaurant. Ran back to her parents with some dramatic exit speech about ambition and status. And Daniel? He got left with debt, disgrace, and a deep sense of who he'd become. You were right, he finally said. My hands froze over the towel I was using. About everything. I turned into someone I can't even recognize. I thought marrying into wealth would fix my insecurities. I thought pushing you away would make me look stronger. But it just made me hollow. For the first time in years, he spoke like a man. Not like a businessman. Not like a groom. Not like someone performing for the world. Just a man. A broken, honest, struggling man. I was ashamed, he added. That day at the wedding. I knew you didn't fit in with that world. And instead of embracing you, I pushed you away to protect my image. He paused. I betrayed the only person who ever stood by me. The words hung in the air like fragile ornaments. One wrong move and they'd shatter. I wanted to yell. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to cry and throw a bag of flour at his head. But I just looked at him. You left me humiliated, Daniel. Not just hurt, humiliated. In front of strangers. Like I was some uninvited ghost. He nodded. I know. And I live with it every day. He pulled something from his coat. A photograph. Creased, faded photo of him on my shoulders, both of us at a county fair, cotton candy in hand, grinning like idiot. I keep this in my wallet, he said. Always have. Even when I was being a jackass. I offered. He chuckled. Yeah. That. I took the photo. Ran my fingers over the crease. That day was one of the last times we laughed without baggage. I don't deserve forgiveness, he said. I met his eyes. No, you don't. His face dropped. But I'll give it to you anyway. He looked up, stunned. Not because you earned it, but because I need to stop carrying this weight. I've carried enough in my life. He nodded slowly. No dramatic tears. No music swelling in the background. Just a moment. Real and raw. I poured him a cup of coffee. He sat down. We didn't say much after that. Sometimes healing doesn't come in fireworks. Sometimes it comes in shared silence and second chances. And in that little bakery, on a snowy Christmas Eve, a father and son began building something new. Not a restaurant, not a business, just a relationship rebuilt from the ashes of revenge. And the sweetness of understanding. Christmas morning rolled in quietly. No carolers, no booming laughter. Just the soft hum of the heater in the bakery and the muffled sound of tires on snow outside. For the first time in years, I woke up without that lump in my throat. You know the one, the kind that reminds you someone's missing. But that morning, someone wasn't missing. He was asleep on my old couch, snoring lightly, wrapped in a patchy quilt that smelled like cinnamon and regret. Daniel. I stood there watching him like a parent watching their child sleep for the first time in years. His face looked younger somehow, like life had drained all that ego out and left behind the boy I used to know, just older, with a few emotional scars to match mine. He woke up groggy, blinking like a man adjusting to a second chance. You made coffee? He asked. Of course I did, I replied. This is a bakery, not a cave. He smiled. Small, honest, and a bit crooked, the kind of smile you don't fake. We sat across from each other at the little corner table by the window, the one where I used to imagine playing cards with my grandkids someday. Never thought it'd be the stage for rebuilding a broken bridge instead. Daniel sipped his coffee slowly. No sugar, no cream, still bitter, still stubborn. I've been thinking, he finally said, about what comes next. I raised an eyebrow. I want to work here. I nearly choked on my toast. Here? As in, this bakery? He nodded. I mean, you don't have to say yes right away. I'll prove myself. Clean the floors, stack the shelves, bake if you teach me. I don't want anything handed to me. I want to be part of this. I leaned back, studying him. His eyes didn't flinch. His hands were steady. He wasn't begging. He was offering. All right, I said, shrugging. But you're on muffin duty. He blinked. Muffins? Yep. You burn 'em, you eat 'em. He laughed, an actual, full laugh. It filled the room like music. We spent the rest of Christmas baking together. He messed up the first batch, of course. Forgot the baking powder. They came out looking like sad little hockey pucks. We both tried to eat them out of pride, but ended up laughing so hard we almost cried. Customers trickled in throughout the day, some lonely, some joyful, some just craving sugar. One older woman, probably in her 80s, leaned in and whispered, "He's your son, isn't he?" I nodded. "I can tell," she said. "He's got your eyes. And your stubborn chin." I smiled. "Glad to see you two found your way back." Her words hit me harder than I expected. Because that's what it was, wasn't it? Not a revenge story anymore. A redemption one. By the end of the day, Daniel had flour on his face, icing on his apron, and a look in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. Peace. As we closed shop and stepped out into the snowy night, he turned to me. "Thank you, Dad." 2 words. Not much. But enough. I didn't need an apology anymore. I didn't need groveling. I needed this. A simple, human connection. As we walked home, side by side, not one in front of the other, I realized something. This revenge I'd planned? It wasn't about hurting him. It was about showing him who he really was. And sometimes, the sweetest revenge is letting someone remember their own soul. Under the Christmas lights, with snow in our hair and muffins in our hands, we weren't a broken family anymore. We were just starting over. And starting over felt good. The new year arrived with the smell of butter and hope. January is usually slow for bakeries, people making promises to quit carbs, juice cleanse their souls, all that nonsense. But not at Morgan's Oven. Maybe it was the cinnamon scent, or maybe it was word of mouth from folks who couldn't care less about resolutions. Whatever it was, we were packed. And now we were 2. Daniel and I. Father and son, side by side behind the counter, elbow deep in batter and slowly scrubbing guilt out of the cracks. He was terrible at first. Burnt croissants, iced cookies that looked like they were decorated by a blindfolded raccoon. He once put salt instead of sugar into a batch of mini cakes, and one poor customer actually called us and asked if it was a prank. I made him eat one. But he learned, slowly, patiently, like he was rebuilding something sacred with each knead and whisk. And I let him. I didn't hover. I didn't lecture. I just let him rise, like the dough he finally stopped killing. Customers started to notice. "Your boy's got a smile on him now," one old man said as he left with a warm cherry pie. "Didn't have that before." "He didn't have you before," I replied, quieter than the rustle of the paper bag. Daniel started talking more, asking about my past, my childhood, even about his mom. Things he never asked before when he was busy chasing his version of success. Turns out, failure humbles you. But love rebuilds you. One night, we sat on the rooftop of the bakery with 2 mugs of cocoa and a shared silence that wasn't awkward anymore. "You know," he said, staring at the stars, "I used to think you were just old-fashioned. A relic. Someone who didn't understand modern ambition." I snorted. "Still kinda true. I use a flip phone, remember?" He chuckled. "Yeah. But now I get it. You weren't afraid of ambition. You were afraid of me losing my soul to it." That stopped me. Because he was right. I never wanted him to fail. I just wanted him to remember who he was. To honor the people who helped him get there. Not to forget his roots while chasing clouds. He sipped his cocoa thoughtfully. "You think Clara ever really loved me?" I shrugged. "Maybe. But she loved the version of you that was climbing. Not the one who might stumble." He didn't argue. Just nodded. Then he looked at me, really looked at me. I don't want to climb anymore. I want to build. Those words stuck. Because building, it's what fathers do. It's what we'd always done. I built him, and now he was building himself back again, brick by brick, loaf by loaf. The next morning, I handed him a key. He stared at it. What's this? Your key to the bakery, I said. You're not a helper anymore. You're a partner. His jaw dropped. Wait, really? I nodded. But, after everything? I smirked. Think of it as me investing in my own revenge story having a sequel. He laughed so hard he nearly dropped a tray of muffins. But there it was, the moment I forgave him, not with words, but with trust. You can't undo the past. But you can plant something new in its ashes. And in the warmth of a little bakery, filled with the scent of second chances, that's exactly what we did. February came. Chilly, damp, and moody, kind of like a heart still trying to forget it was broken. Business at Morgan's oven stayed steady. Lovebirds came in for Valentine's specials, young couples split red velvet cupcakes like it meant something. Meanwhile, Daniel and we kept building. One morning, while checking our online orders, Daniel looked up and said something that stopped me mid-sip of coffee. I want to throw another wedding. I choked. Whose? I asked, half joking. He didn't laugh. Mine. I stared at him like he'd grown a second head. He leaned on the counter, sheepish. Not to Clara, obviously. I mean, a redo. A second wedding. Not to celebrate a marriage, but to celebrate what I should have done the first time. Which is? I asked cautiously. To honor you. You could have heard a sprinkle fall on a cookie in that moment. He went on. I want to invite everyone from the original wedding. All of them. And I want them to see the version of me who actually knows how to treat his father. Now, I'll admit, at first, I thought the idea was ridiculous. Who plans a do-over wedding just to make a point? But then again, why not? Life doesn't usually hand you second chances. And when it does, you better grab them like the last cinnamon roll on a crowded Sunday. So we did it. We planned the whole thing in 2 weeks. Instead of a grand venue, we hosted it in the bakery. Moved the tables, hung lights, played jazz. It wasn't fancy, but it was full of heart. We called it a celebration of remembrance. And believe it or not, people showed up. Even Clara's parents. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe guilt. Maybe boredom. Who cares? They all walked in, expecting something awkward or pitiful. Instead, they walked into warmth. Daniel stood up in front of everyone, eyes steady, voice clear. This man, he said, pointing at me, was the only one who never left my side, even after I kicked him out of my life like a fool. I didn't just disrespect him at my wedding, I buried our bond in front of a crowd. But now? Now I want to dig it back up and show it the sunlight. He looked at me, eyes glistening. Dad, this is your seat. Not in the back, not near the speaker, but right here, beside me. Everyone turned to me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a side character in my own story. I stood up slowly, heart pounding, legs trembling, not from age, but emotion. And I walked to the front. Daniel pulled out a chair. I sat. People clapped. Clara's parents looked like they'd bitten into lemons. Good. As the evening rolled on, people danced. We served tiny cupcakes with little notes attached that read, "Forgiveness is sweeter than frosting." Daniel and I shared a dance, not a literal one. Just one of those soft moments when two people talk and smile and time forgets to tick. You really didn't have to do this, I said. I did, he replied. Because you never got the wedding you deserved. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was redemption. And sometimes, redemption tastes like almond cake and feels like finally being seen. Life after the remembrance wedding got quiet again, but a good kind of quiet. Like when the storm's gone and you can finally hear yourself think. Daniel and I got into a rhythm. He opened the shop every morning at 6:30 sharp, always bleary-eyed and muttering about how sunlight is rude. I took the afternoon shifts, making sure. The regulars had their favorite scones and gossip. The bakery buzzed. People smiled more. Some even called us the father-son duo that bakes. One guy on social media wrote, "If Disney made a bakery, it'd be this one." I printed it and taped it to the espresso machine. Daniel groaned every time he saw it. You know we're going viral, right? He said one evening, scrolling through his phone. Viral sounds like a rash, I grumbled. He laughed. No, Dad, like trending. Cool. Popular. People love our story. I sipped my coffee. People love drama. And cinnamon. But deep down I got it. The world loves a good comeback, and ours was one for the books. And then, the cherry on top. A letter arrived. From Clara. Not handwritten. Of course not. Just a typed email with no punctuation and a tone that screamed, I regret everything but will die before admitting it. She wrote that she saw the bakery on Instagram, and that she hoped Daniel was well. She also mentioned how rough things had been lately, and that she was staying with her parents for a while. Translation? She wanted back in. Daniel read it and tossed his phone on the counter like it was coated in slime. I actually thought I loved her, he muttered. Isn't that wild? I nodded. Love can feel real until you see it under the right lighting. Should I respond? Only if you're bored, I said. Or hungry for chaos. He didn't reply. That was his final closure, silence. And silence, my friend, can be the loudest revenge of all. Weeks passed. Then months. One afternoon, as we were closing shop, Daniel looked up and said something unexpected. You know, I want to open another location. I raised a brow. Expansion? Sounds dangerous. He grinned. I mean, we're already sold out half the week. People are asking, what if we opened a second bakery? In that plaza where Clara's dad owns a boutique. I laughed so hard I nearly fell off my stool. Now that, I said, wiping my eyes, would be poetic. A few months later, we did just that. Morgan's Oven No. 2 opened right across from Clara's family boutique. Opening day? She was there. Watching from across the street like a ghost who realized she was no longer haunting, she was just forgotten. We didn't wave. We didn't speak. But I looked her right in the eyes and offered the warmest, most unapologetic smile I've ever smiled. Because that day, the son who once kicked me out in front of the world was now handing out free cupcakes with, Love Dad, frosted on top. Because the man who was once discarded as too old, too plain, too embarrassing, was now the heart of a thriving business, a proud name on 2 storefronts, and the hero of a story no one saw coming. Because life, oh life, has a funny way of handing you the microphone the second you stop begging for the stage. And because, my friend, the last laugh was mine. Forever frosted with sweet, sweet revenge, and just a hint of forgiveness. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. That's free and only way to support us. Thank you.